I was about to close a $280 million deal with a Mafia boss when my maid's daughter walked into the room and whispered, "He's lying to you." What happened next? Changed everything. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My hands trembled as I straightened the contract papers one final time. $280 million. The numbers seemed impossible, even printed there in black and white on the crisp letterhead. At 63, I thought my biggest deals were behind me. I thought I'd spend my remaining years managing what was left of Hartwell Industries, watching it slowly decline like so many family businesses do. But Vincent Torino had changed everything. He sat across from me in my conference room, his silver hair perfectly styled, his Italian suit probably worth more than most people's cars. There was something magnetic about him. The way he spoke, the confidence in his gestures, the slight accent that made everything sound more sophisticated. When he'd first contacted me 6 months ago, I'd been skeptical. Men like Vincent Torino didn't usually seek out companies like mine. "Mrs. Hartwell," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. "This partnership will transform your legacy. Your father would be proud." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Dad had built Hartwell Industries from nothing, working 16-hour days until the stress killed him at 58. I'd been fighting to honor his memory ever since, but the market had changed. We couldn't compete with the big corporations anymore. Vincent leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. $280 million for a 70% stake. You'll retain control of operations, of course. I'm simply the silent partner providing the capital injection you need. It was too good to be true, but I'd had my lawyers review everything 3 times. The money was real. Vincent's credentials checked out, at least the ones we could verify. He owned holdings across Europe and South America, had fingers in shipping, real estate, import-export, the kind of diversified portfolio that old money built over generations. "The funds will transfer today," Vincent continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "We can have this finalized within the hour." My heart pounded. After struggling for years, watching competitors steal our contracts, laying off employees who'd been with us for decades, this was salvation. This was the miracle I'd prayed for every night. I reached for my pen, my signature ready to change everything. That's when the conference room door burst open. Sloane stumbled in, her dark hair disheveled, her usual composed demeanor completely shattered. She looked like she'd been running. Her mother Maria had worked for my family for 15 years, keeping our house spotless, preparing meals, handling the mundane details that kept my life organized. Sloane had always been quiet, respectful, almost invisible. At 28, she worked part-time helping her mother while attending community college. She'd never, ever interrupted a business meeting. "Mrs. Hartwell," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper but carrying an urgency that made my blood freeze. "He's lying to you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vincent's expression shifted so subtly I almost missed it. A tightening around his eyes, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, but his smile remained perfectly in place. "I'm sorry," I stammered, heat flooding my cheeks. "Sloane, what are you doing here?" "You can't just—" "Please," she interrupted, her dark eyes locked on mine with an intensity I'd never seen before. "Don't sign anything, please." The humiliation crashed over me like a wave. Here I was, conducting the most important business meeting of my life, and the housekeeper's daughter was treating me like a confused old woman who needed protection from her own decisions. Vincent chuckled, a sound like velvet over steel. "Perhaps the young lady is concerned about employment security? I assure you, all current staff will be retained." "That's not—" Sloane started, but I cut her off. "Enough." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Sloane, leave. Now." She took a step closer to the table, desperation creeping into her voice. "Mrs. Hartwell, I know how this looks, but you have to listen to me. Vincent Torino isn't who he says he is." The silence that followed was deafening. Vincent's fingers drummed once against the polished wood of the conference table, a gesture so subtle I might have imagined it. But something about that tiny movement sent a chill down my spine. Young lady, Vincent said, his tone still pleasant but with an edge that hadn't been there before. These are serious accusations. I hope you have proof to back them up. Sloane's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me with something that might have been pity. I'm trying to save your life. My life? I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. Sloane, you're being ridiculous. Mr. Torino is offering us the chance to rebuild everything. This is legitimate business. It's not, she whispered. And if you sign that contract, you won't live to regret it. The words hung in the air like a threat. Vincent's smile never wavered, but I caught him glancing at his watch. A simple gesture, but it felt loaded with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. I think, I said carefully, standing up from my chair, this meeting needs to be postponed. Colleen. Vincent's voice was soft, almost fatherly. Don't let unfounded paranoia destroy the opportunity of a lifetime. Your company is hemorrhaging money. Without this injection, you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. He was right, and we both knew it. The quarterly reports were sitting in my office safe, painting a picture of steady decline that kept me awake at night. Without this deal, I'd have to start laying off more employees within weeks. The pension fund was already stretched thin. Sloane stepped between me and the contract, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. Mrs. Hartwell, I know you don't trust me. I know I'm just the maid's daughter to you, but my mother overheard something about you. What kind of something? I found myself asking, despite everything. Sloane glanced at Vincent, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. They're planning to kill you after you sign. The pen slipped from my fingers, clattering against the table. Vincent was already standing, straightening his tie with practiced ease. I think emotions are running too high for productive discussion. Perhaps we should reconvene tomorrow, Colleen. Give you time to. Consider your options. But as he gathered his papers, I noticed his hands weren't quite steady. And for the first time since he'd walked into my office, Vincent Torino looked like a man with something to hide. After he left, Sloane and I stood alone in the conference room, the unsigned contract lying between us like evidence of a crime that hadn't been committed yet. You have no idea what you've just done, I told her, my voice shaking with anger and something else I couldn't name. Sloane met my gaze steadily. I know exactly what I've done. I've bought you one more day to stay alive. As she walked out, leaving me alone with the contract and my doubts, I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire world was about to collapse. But I didn't know yet whether Sloane was my salvation or my destruction. The pen lay where I'd dropped it, and the signature line remained ominously blank. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay in my king-sized bed staring at the ceiling while Sloane's words echoed in my mind. They're planning to kill you after you sign. Ridiculous. Paranoid. The desperate imagination of a young woman who'd probably watched too many crime shows. But as the hours crawled by, doubt crept in like fog under a door. I'd built my life on logic, on careful analysis of facts and figures. Emotion was a luxury I couldn't afford in business. Yet something about Vincent's reaction to Sloane's interruption nagged at me. The way his smile had flickered for just a moment. The subtle glance at his watch. By morning, I'd convinced myself I was being foolish. Vincent Torino represented everything I needed. Capital, connections, a future for the company Dad had built with his bare hands. I couldn't let the hysterical warnings of a college student destroy that. I called Vincent at 7 a.m. sharp. Colleen, his voice was warm, concerned. I hope you've had time to reconsider. I'd hate for yesterday's interruption to damage what we're building together. I'm ready to proceed, I said, gripping the phone tighter than necessary. Can we meet today? Of course. But perhaps we should meet somewhere more private this time. I have a suite at the Meridian Hotel. We can finalize everything without any unexpected visitors. Something about the way he said unexpected visitors made my skin crawl. But I pushed the feeling aside. What time? Shall we say 2 o'clock? And Colleen, perhaps it would be best if you came alone. These documents are highly confidential. After I hung up, I found myself standing at my kitchen window, watching Maria tend to the garden beds. She'd been with our family for 15 years, ever since her husband died, and left her with a young daughter to raise. Quiet, hardworking, never asking for anything beyond her modest salary and the small apartment above our garage. Now her daughter was claiming my business partner was a killer. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the office early, hoping work would clear my head. But I'd barely settled at my desk when my secretary buzzed the intercom. "Mrs. Hartwell? There's a young woman here to see you. Says it's urgent." Sloane walked into my office looking like she hadn't slept either. Her usually neat appearance was rumpled, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. "Mrs. Hartwell, I know you don't want to see me, but I have to try one more time." "Sloane, I've made my decision. The meeting is today at 2. "At the Meridian Hotel?" she asked, and my blood went cold. "How did you—" "Because I've been watching him." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo. "This was taken outside your office building yesterday morning, 2 hours before your meeting." The image showed Vincent standing beside a black sedan, but he wasn't alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their faces hard and unfriendly. One had a visible scar running from his ear to his jaw. "Who are they?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know their names, but I know what they are." Sloane's voice was barely a whisper. "My mother. She's seen men like this before. Back in El Salvador, before we came here." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you, Vincent Torino isn't just a businessman, and those men aren't his assistants." I stared at the photo, my mind racing. The men looked like exactly what Sloane was implying. Muscle, enforcers, the kind of people who solved problems with violence instead of lawyers. "Even if that's true," I said slowly, "it doesn't mean he intends to hurt me. Many legitimate businessmen need security." Sloane's shoulders sagged. "Mrs. Hartwell, my mother heard them talking yesterday after you postponed the meeting. They were speaking Spanish. They didn't know she could understand." "What did they say?" "Vincent was angry. He said the old woman was supposed to sign yesterday, and now she was getting suspicious." One of the other men asked if they should just take the money and run. Vincent said no. They needed her signature first, and then, she swallowed hard. Then they needed to clean up loose ends. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "Sloane, if this is some kind of elaborate joke, it's not a joke." Her composure cracked, and I saw real fear in her eyes. "Mrs. Hartwell, I know you think I'm just the maid's daughter. I know you see me as nothing more than part of the furniture, but I'm trying to save your life." "Why?" The question came out harsher than I intended. "If what you're saying is true, why risk yourself to warn me? What's in it for you?" Sloane was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was so soft I had to strain to hear it. "Because someone should care enough to try." The simple honesty of it hit me like a slap. Here was this young woman, someone I'd barely acknowledged in 15 years, putting herself in potential danger because she believed I deserved protection. "I have to go to this meeting," I said finally. "If I don't show up, if I back out now." "Then you disappear completely, and he finds another way to get what he wants." Sloane nodded grimly. "I know, but maybe there's another way." "What do you mean?" "Let me come with you." "Absolutely not." "Not to the meeting," she said quickly. "But to the hotel. I can wait in the lobby, keep watch. If something goes wrong." "If something goes wrong, you'll what? Call the police? And tell them what? That you overheard some Spanish conversation that might have been about killing someone?" Sloane's jaw tightened. "I'll figure something out." Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. This slip of a girl, barely out of college, was prepared to take on dangerous men to protect someone who'd never shown her any particular kindness. "Sloane, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but, Mrs. Hartwell," her voice cut through my protestations with surprising authority. "You're going to that meeting whether I help you or not. I can see it in your eyes. You need this deal too much to walk away. So let me help you. Let me be there in case you need someone." I studied her face, seeing something I'd never noticed before. Determination, intelligence, A strength that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with character. "Fine," I said against my better judgment. "But you stay in the lobby. No matter what happens, you do not come upstairs." Relief flooded her features. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, I called after her. "Sloan, if you're wrong about this, if Vincent is legitimate and this deal falls through because of your suspicions," she paused at the door, her hand on the handle, "then you'll be alive to hate me for it." After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the photo on her phone that she'd forwarded to mine. Those men didn't look like accountants or lawyers. They looked like the kind of people who made problems disappear. But even knowing that, I couldn't walk away from $280 million. The company was dying. Our employees were counting on me. Dad's legacy was slipping away with every passing month. At 1:30, I drove to the Meridian Hotel, my hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos in my mind. In my rearview mirror, I caught glimpses of a small blue Honda following at a discreet distance. Sloan was keeping her word. As I pulled into the hotel parking garage, one thought echoed through my mind with terrifying clarity. By evening, I'd either be the savior of Hartwell Industries, or I'd be dead. The unsigned contract sat in my briefcase like a loaded gun, and I still didn't know which way I planned to aim it. The Meridian Hotel lobby was exactly what I expected from a five-star establishment. Marble floors that clicked under my heels, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over leather furniture, the kind of understated elegance that whispered money rather than shouted it. I spotted Sloan immediately, sitting in a wingback chair near the elevators, a textbook open in her lap, as if she were just another college student studying in an upscale environment. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave an almost imperceptible nod. Vincent's suite was on the 20th floor. As the elevator climbed, I tried to calm my racing heart. This was business. This was salvation for my company. Whatever Sloan thought she'd overheard, whatever those photos showed, I was here to secure the future of Hartwell Industries. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with expensive artwork. Suite 2008 was at the end, its mahogany door looking more like the entrance to a private residence than a hotel room. Vincent answered on the first knock, and my breath caught. Gone was the perfectly tailored businessman from yesterday. Today, he wore dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His silver hair was slightly mussed, and there was something different in his eyes, a predatory gleam that made my skin crawl. "Colleen," he said, stepping aside to let me enter, right on time. The suite was massive, a living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a dining table set for two, and what looked like a bedroom beyond. But what caught my attention were the three other men sitting around the coffee table. They looked up as I entered, and I recognized two of them from Sloane's photograph. The scarred man gave me a smile that never reached his eyes. "I thought we were meeting alone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just some associates," Vincent replied smoothly, gesturing toward the dining table where the contract papers were spread out. "They're here to witness the signing, purely ceremonial." Everything about this felt wrong. The casual dress, the presence of these men, the way Vincent moved around the suite like he owned it. But the contract was there, waiting. $280 million in capital that could save everything Dad had built. "Shall we get started?" Vincent asked, pulling out a chair for me. I sat down, acutely aware of the four men watching my every movement. The contract looked the same as yesterday. Pages of legal language that my lawyers had already reviewed, transfer instructions for the funds, partnership agreements that would inject new life into Hartwell Industries. "The money will transfer the moment you sign," Vincent said, settling into the chair beside me. "My bank is standing by." I picked up the pen, my hand trembling slightly. The signature line beckoned, just my name, and everything would change. That's when my phone rang. "I'm sorry," I said, glancing at the screen. It was Sloan. "I should take this." Vincent's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps it can wait. We're so close to finalizing everything." But something in his voice, a hint of urgency, maybe even desperation, made me answer the call. "Mrs. Hartwell." Sloane's voice was breathless, panicked. "Don't sign anything. I'm in the hotel business center, and I've been researching Vincent Torino online. Sloane, this isn't the time. He's not Vincent Torino, she interrupted. The real Vincent Torino died 3 years ago in a car accident in Naples. Mrs. Hartwell, the man you're with, is using a dead man's identity. The pen slipped from my fingers for the second time in 2 days. I looked up to find Vincent watching me intently, his dark eyes unreadable. Is everything all right? He asked. Yes, just a minor issue at the office. I ended the call, my mind reeling. The man sitting beside me wasn't Vincent Torino. He was someone else entirely. Someone who'd stolen the identity of a dead businessman and crafted an elaborate deception to. What? What did he really want? You look pale, Colleen, Vincent, or whoever he was, said softly. Perhaps some water? He gestured to one of his associates, who moved toward the wet bar. But as the man passed behind my chair, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood freeze. A shoulder holster, the dark metal of a gun just visible beneath his jacket. Actually, I said, standing abruptly, I'm feeling a bit unwell. Perhaps we should postpone this until tomorrow. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vincent's charming smile faltered, and for a moment I saw something predatory flash across his features. Colleen, he said, rising slowly, you've come this far. Your company needs this injection of capital. Why walk away when we're so close to success? I just need some time to what? His voice was sharper now, the Italian accent slightly more pronounced. To let your doubts destroy the opportunity of a lifetime? The 3 men around the coffee table had stopped pretending to read their newspapers. They were watching us now, their attention focused and dangerous. I think, I said carefully, I should have my lawyers review the contract one more time. Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your lawyers have already reviewed it 3 times. What could they possibly find now that they missed before? He was right, and we both knew it. But stalling was the only strategy I had left. Nevertheless, I said, moving toward my purse, I prefer to be thorough. Sit down, Colleen. The words were spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of a command. When I looked at Vincent, at the man wearing Vincent's face, I saw someone entirely different from the charming businessman who'd first contacted me. I'm sorry? I said sit down. He gestured to the chair I'd vacated. We're going to finish this conversation. The scarred man had moved to block the door. Another stood near the windows. The third remained by the wet bar, his hand resting casually near his jacket. For the first time since entering the suite, I understood that I might not be leaving. You seem nervous, Vincent said, settling back into his chair as if we were still conducting a normal business meeting. Is there something troubling you? I forced myself to sit, my mind racing through possible escape routes. The door was blocked. The windows were 20 floors up. My phone was on the table, but I doubted they'd let me use it again. I'm fine, I managed. Just want to make sure I understand all the terms. Oh, I think you understand perfectly. Vincent leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. The question is whether you're going to cooperate, or whether we need to find alternative methods of persuasion. The mask was completely off now. Whatever charm he'd used to lure me here had evaporated, leaving behind something cold and calculating. What do you really want? I asked. Vincent smiled, and this time it was genuine. What I've wanted from the beginning, Colleen. Your signature on that contract. But why? If the money isn't real? If you're not who you claim to be? Who says the money isn't real? He pulled out his phone, scrolling to what looked like a bank account. The balance showed exactly $280 million. The funds are quite genuine. The bank account is legitimate. What's false is simply my identity. Then who are you? Someone who needs to wash a very large sum of money, he said matter-of-factly. Your company provides the perfect vehicle. A legitimate business with a respected history, struggling enough to need capital injection, but stable enough to handle large transactions without raising suspicions. The pieces began clicking into place. This wasn't about partnership or investment. This was about using Hartwell Industries as a front for money laundering. And after you've cleaned your money through my company, Vincent's smile widened. Well, that's where things become complicated. You see, Colleen, you'd know too much. You'd be a liability. My phone buzzed with a text message. Vincent glanced at it, then at me. "Your young friend seems quite persistent," he said. "What did she tell you on that call?" I said nothing, but my silence was apparently answer enough. "Ah," Vincent nodded. "She discovered my little identity issue. Clever girl. I underestimated her." He gestured to the scarred man, who moved toward the phone on the table. "Call her," Vincent commanded. "Tell her to come up. Tell her you need her help with something." "No." The word came out stronger than I felt. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "No, I won't drag her into this. Colleen, you misunderstand the situation. You don't have a choice." He nodded to one of his men, who pulled out his phone. "We already know she's downstairs. We know what car she drives, where she lives, where her mother works. The question is whether she joins this conversation willingly or whether we collect her ourselves." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Sloane had risked everything to warn me, and now I'd led her straight into danger. "What guarantee do I have that you'll let her go if I cooperate?" Vincent's laugh was genuinely amused. "You don't, but you have my word that if you don't cooperate, what happens to both of you will be considerably worse than if you do." My hands shook as I reached for my phone. Whatever game this man was playing, whatever he really wanted, Sloane and I were now both trapped in it. As I scrolled to her number, one thought echoed through my mind. The girl who'd tried to save me was about to become another victim of my greed. I stared at my phone, Vincent's threat hanging over me like a sword. Call Sloane up here, or they'd go get her themselves. Either way, she was going to be dragged into this nightmare because of my greed, my desperate need to save a company that might not be worth saving. "I'm waiting, Colleen," Vincent said, his voice deceptively patient. Before I could dial, my phone rang again. Sloane's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Vincent commanded. "Put it on speaker." With trembling fingers, I accepted the call and pressed the speaker button. "Mrs. Hartwell," Sloane's voice filled the suite, tight with urgency. "I found something else. Something about your family." Vincent's eyes sharpened. The men around the room shifted, suddenly more alert. "Sloane, I can't talk right now." "Mrs. Hartwell, please listen. I know why he's targeting you specifically. It's not random." Her voice cracked slightly. "He knew your husband." The words hit me like a physical blow. Robert had been dead for 8 years, killed in what police ruled a single-car accident on a rain-slicked highway. But the pain of losing him still felt fresh, especially when the company he'd helped build was struggling. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Mrs. Hartwell, your husband's accident. It wasn't an accident." Vincent was watching me with something that might have been amusement. The scarred man had moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with something sharper. Gun oil, maybe. "Sloane, you need to leave the hotel. Right now." "I can't. They're watching me." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "There are 2 men in the lobby now, and they're not trying to hide the fact that they're watching me." Vincent gestured to one of his associates, who nodded and spoke quietly into his phone in what sounded like Spanish. "Tell her to come up," Vincent said softly. "Tell her you need her help. Make it convincing." "Sloane," I said, my voice breaking. "I need you to come to suite 2008. I need your help with something." "Mrs. Hartwell, are you all right? You sound strange. Just come up, please." There was a long pause. Then, "Mrs. Hartwell, if you're in trouble, say the word contract again." Smart girl. Even in crisis, she was thinking clearly. "The contract is here," I said carefully. "We're discussing the contract terms." Another pause. "I'm coming up, but Mrs. Hartwell, there's something I need to tell you when I get there. Something about who I really am." The line went dead. Vincent smiled and settled back in his chair like a cat that had cornered its prey. "Who she really is," he mused. "Interesting choice of words. What do you mean?" "Oh, Colleen, you really don't know, do you?" Vincent's amusement seemed genuine. "Your faithful housekeeper's daughter isn't quite what she appears to be." Before I could ask what he meant, there was a soft knock at the door. The scarred man opened it, and Sloane walked in, her face pale but determined. She took in the scene quickly. The men positioned around the room, Vincent's casual posture, my obvious distress. "Mrs. Hartwell," she said carefully. Are you hurt? Not yet, Vincent answered for me. But the evening is young. Sloane's jaw tightened, and I saw something in her expression that I'd never noticed before. Strength, yes, but something else. Something that looked almost familiar. Let her go, Sloane said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Your business is with me. Vincent raised an eyebrow. Is it? How interesting. And why would my business be with the housekeeper's daughter? Because I'm not the housekeeper's daughter. The words fell into the room like stones into still water, creating ripples that reached every corner. I stared at Sloane, my mind struggling to process what she'd just said. I'm sorry. What? I managed. Sloane looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, I really saw her. The dark hair that caught the light in familiar ways. The stubborn set of her jaw. The way she held her shoulders when she was determined. Mrs. Hartwell, she said softly. Robert Hartwell was my father. The room tilted. My vision grayed at the edges, and I gripped the arms of my chair to keep from falling. That's impossible, I whispered. Robert never. He wouldn't. He didn't know, Sloane said quickly. I don't think he ever knew. Vincent was watching this revelation unfold with obvious satisfaction. Oh, this is better than I hoped, he murmured. Shut up, Sloane snapped, and something in her voice reminded me so powerfully of Robert that my heart nearly stopped. My mother was Maria Santos before she became Maria Rodriguez, Sloane continued, her eyes never leaving mine. She worked as a secretary at Hartwell Industries 29 years ago, before you and Robert were married. The pieces began clicking together with horrible clarity. Maria had started working for us 15 years ago, but she'd always seemed to know more about the house, about Robert's preferences, than a new employee should. I'd attributed it to her attention to detail, her dedication to doing the job well. Robert had an affair, I said numbly. A brief one, Sloane confirmed. According to my mother, it ended when he got engaged to you. She never told him she was pregnant. She thought it was better that way. But why come to work for us? Why bring you into our house? Sloane's composure cracked slightly. Because she wanted me to know who my father was, even if he couldn't know who I was. She wanted me to see the man he was, the family he built. She thought maybe someday. Someday she'd tell him, I finished. But then he died, and it was too late. Vincent slow-clapped, the sound sharp and mocking in the heavy silence. What a touching family reunion. Now that we have everyone together, perhaps we can get back to business. You killed him, Sloane said, turning to face Vincent with a fury that transformed her entire demeanor. You killed my father. Indirectly, Vincent admitted with a shrug. Robert was asking too many questions about some of my business dealings. He'd discovered certain irregularities in shipments coming through the port facilities his company used. Nothing that couldn't be explained, but Robert had always been annoyingly honest. The casual way he spoke about my husband's murder made my stomach revolt. Robert had died because he'd stumbled onto something he shouldn't have seen. So, you had him killed? I said, my voice barely audible. I had him convinced to take a late-night drive on a dangerous road during a storm, Vincent corrected. What happened after that was simply unfortunate timing. You bastard, Sloane breathed. And now, Vincent continued, his widow is going to help me clean $280 million through the company he loved so much. There's a certain poetic justice to it, don't you think? I looked at Sloane, really looked at her, and saw Robert in the shape of her nose, in the determined set of her chin, in the way her eyes flashed when she was angry. My husband's daughter had been living in my house for 15 years, and I'd never seen it. Why didn't you tell me? I asked her. Because I was just the maid's daughter to you, Sloane said simply. You never saw me as anything more than part of the furniture. And after a while, I convinced myself it was better that way. Better to be invisible than to risk being rejected by the only family I had left. The words cut deep because they were true. I had dismissed her, ignored her, treated her as nothing more than an extension of her mother's service. And all the while, she'd been Robert's child, the daughter he'd never known he had. This is all very touching, Vincent interrupted. But we have business to conclude. Colleen, you're going to sign that contract, and your stepdaughter here is going to ensure that you do." He gestured to the scarred man, who moved behind Sloane's chair. The threat was clear. "Don't," Sloane said quickly. "Mrs. Hartwell, don't sign anything because of me. I can't let him hurt you," I said, reaching for the pen. "You already hurt me," Sloane replied, her voice soft but steady. "Every day for 15 years you hurt me by refusing to see me. But you know what? I still tried to save you. Because that's what family does." Vincent's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted slightly. "It seems we have a complication," he said, looking at his men. "Hotel security is asking questions about our extended stay." The scarred man spoke rapidly in Spanish. Vincent's frown deepened. "We need to move this along," he said, his casual demeanor slipping. "Colleen, sign the contract, now." But as I reached for the pen, Sloane caught my eye. In her gaze, I saw something that made my blood run cold with hope. She had a plan, and for the first time since Robert's death, I wasn't facing danger alone. I had family fighting beside me, even if I'd been too blind to see it for 15 years. Vincent's patience was wearing thin. I could see it in the way his fingers drummed against the table, in the tightness around his eyes as he glanced repeatedly at his phone. Whatever complication had arisen with hotel security was making him nervous, and nervous criminals were dangerous criminals. "Colleen," he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge, "I'm going to count to 10. If you haven't signed by then, your stepdaughter will pay the price for your hesitation." The scarred man's hand moved to rest on Sloane's shoulder. She didn't flinch, but I saw the slight tension in her posture. "1," Vincent began. I gripped the pen, my mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. Had to be something I was missing. 2. Sloane caught my eye and mouthed something I couldn't quite make out. Then she did it again, more clearly. "Trust me." 3. What plan could she possibly have? We were trapped 20 floors up with armed men blocking every exit. Even if hotel security was asking questions, they were probably just routine inquiries about checkout times or room service. 4. But then I remembered something. Sloane had been in the business center when she called me. She'd been researching Vincent online, discovering his true identity. What else might she have found? What else might she have done? 5. Vincent's phone buzzed again. This time when he looked at it, his face went pale. 6. The scarred man leaned down to whisper something in Vincent's ear. Whatever he said made Vincent's jaw clench. 7. Another buzz. Vincent's hand trembled slightly as he read the message. 8. That's when I heard it. The faint sound of sirens in the distance, growing closer. 9. Vincent's eyes snapped to Sloane, who was watching him with something that might have been satisfaction. "What did you do?" he demanded. Sloane smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it was Robert's smile. Confident, defiant, unafraid. "I sent emails, lots of them." "What kind of emails?" "To the FBI, to the DEA, to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Division." Her voice was steady, almost conversational. Amazing what you can find when you really dig into someone's background. Amazing what databases a college student can access when she's studying criminal justice. Vincent shot to his feet, his chair toppling backward. "You little—" "I found bank records," Sloane continued, ignoring his rage. "Transaction histories, shell companies. I found a whole network of money laundering operations spanning 3 countries. And I found something else." She reached into her jacket pocket slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might spook the armed men. What she pulled out was a small digital recorder. "I've been recording this entire conversation," she said simply. "Every threat, every admission, every detail about my father's murder. It's all here." Vincent's face had gone from pale to ashen. "Give me that." "I can't. It's already been uploaded to a secure server, along with copies of all those financial records I found." Sloane's smile widened. "I may be just the maid's daughter to most people, but I'm a computer science major with a specialization in cybersecurity. I know how to protect data." The sirens were much closer now, definitely heading toward the hotel. Vincent spun toward the windows, looking down at the street below. "How many?" he snapped at his men. "Looks like a lot," one of them replied, peering through the curtains. "FBI, local police, maybe more." Vincent's carefully constructed plan was falling apart, and his desperation was making him dangerous. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket, pointing it directly at me. "Then we do this the hard way," he said. "You're going to call them off, or I start shooting." "I can't call them off," Sloan said calmly. "I sent everything on a timer. Even if something happened to me, even if I wanted to stop it, the information is already in federal hands." "You're lying." "Am I?" Sloan tilted her head. "When I was down in the business center, I had over an hour to work while you were setting up your little trap." "You really think I spent that whole time just looking up Vincent Torino's obituary?" Vincent's hand shook as he kept the gun trained on me. "You've destroyed everything." "Good," Sloan said simply. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the suite in an eerie red glow. Through the windows, I could see the flashing lights of what looked like dozens of police vehicles surrounding the hotel. "They've cut the power," the scarred man said, his voice tight with concern. Vincent's phone rang. He answered it with a sharp, "What?" Even from across the room, I could hear the authoritative voice on the other end. "This is Special Agent Morrison with the FBI. The building is surrounded. You have 5 minutes to send down any hostages and surrender peacefully." Vincent ended the call and threw the phone against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. "This is your fault," he snarled at Sloan. "All of it." "No," Sloan replied, standing up slowly despite the gun still pointed in our direction. "This is your fault. You killed an innocent man because he threatened your business. You tried to use his widow to launder your dirty money. You threatened to kill both of us. This is exactly what you deserve." "Shut up!" Vincent's composure had completely cracked. "Just shut up!" But Sloan wasn't finished. "You want to know the really beautiful part? The $280 million you were so eager to clean? I found out where it came from." Vincent went very still. "It's not just dirty money," Sloan continued. "It's stolen money. Money that belongs to a pension fund in Miami. Money that belongs to teachers and firefighters and police officers who trusted their retirement savings to the wrong people." The blood drained from Vincent's face. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I'm good at my job," Sloan said. "Better than you thought. Better than you gave me credit for. And because I had help." "What kind of help?" Sloan looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my heart race. "Mrs. Hartwell, do you remember your husband mentioning a young woman who worked part-time in the company's IT department while she was in college? Someone who helped him trace those suspicious shipment records?" My breath caught. "That was you?" "I was 18, working under my mother's maiden name, Santos. Your husband was the only person in that company who treated me like I mattered, like I had a brain." Her voice softened. "He never knew who I was, but he believed in what I could do. When he started investigating those shipping irregularities, I helped him dig deeper. The pieces clicked together with stunning clarity. You knew about Vincent all along." "I suspected. When he approached you 6 months ago, something about his story didn't feel right. So I started digging again, using everything my father had taught me about following financial trails." Vincent's gun swung between us, his desperation palpable. "None of this matters. You're both still going to die." "Are we?" Sloan asked. "Because I'm pretty sure the FBI has sharpshooters positioned outside those windows right now. I'm pretty sure they've identified everyone in this room. And I'm pretty sure that killing federal witnesses would be the stupidest thing you could possibly do." As if to emphasize her point, a red laser dot appeared on the wall behind Vincent, sweeping slowly across the room. "5 minutes are up," came a voice through a bullhorn from outside. "Send down the hostages now." Vincent's men were looking increasingly nervous. The one by the door kept glancing toward the hallway, as if calculating escape routes. The man by the windows had backed away from the glass. "Boss," the scarred man said quietly, "maybe we should consider—" "No!" Vincent snapped. "We don't run! We finish this." but his authority was cracking along with his composure. I could see it in the way his men avoided his eyes, in the way they shifted their weight toward potential exits. "You know what the really ironic part is?" Sloane said, her voice conversational despite the chaos around us. "If you had just left us alone, if you had tried to launder your money through some other company, you might have gotten away with it. But you had to come after the widow of the man you killed. You had to make it personal." She took a step closer to me, positioning herself between Vincent's gun and my chair. "And the moment you made it personal," she continued, "you made it my business. Because, like it or not, she's family. And family protects family." The words hit me like a physical blow. This young woman I'd ignored for 15 years was willing to die to protect me. She'd spent months planning this confrontation, gathering evidence, setting traps, all to bring down the man who'd killed her father and threatened her family. Her family. Me. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the words barely audible over the chaos outside. Sloane glanced back at me, her expression softening. "For what?" "For not seeing you. For not knowing. For treating you like you didn't matter. You see me now," she said simply. "That's what matters." Vincent's backup phone rang again. This time the voice was louder, more insistent. "This is your final warning. Release the hostages immediately, or we're coming up." Vincent looked around the suite, at his nervous men, at the laser dots now dancing across multiple walls, at the evidence of his crimes being broadcast to federal agents 20 floors below. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," Sloane replied, "it is." And as the sound of footsteps thundered up the stairwell outside, I realized she was right. One way or another, this nightmare was about to end. The suite door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. FBI agents in tactical gear poured through the opening like a black tide, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands that blended into one overwhelming roar of authority. "Get down! Everyone on the ground! Now!" Vincent's men didn't even try to resist. The scarred man dropped his weapon and raised his hands. The others followed suit, their faces resigned to capture. Only Vincent himself remained standing, his gun still wavering between Sloane and me. "It's over," Special Agent Morrison called out, his weapon trained on Vincent. "Drop the gun and step away from the hostages." For a moment, I thought Vincent might actually pull the trigger. His finger tightened on the grip, his eyes wild with the desperation of a cornered animal. But then Sloane did something that stopped my heart. She stepped directly into his line of fire. "Go ahead," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shoot me. But know that killing Robert Hartwell's daughter won't bring back the $280 million that's already been frozen in federal accounts. It won't erase the evidence I've given them. It won't save you from spending the rest of your life in prison." Vincent's hand trembled. "You destroyed everything. You destroyed yourself," Sloane replied. "The moment you decided to kill an innocent man, the moment you thought you could use his family for your own ends." The gun clattered to the floor. Within seconds, federal agents had Vincent and his men in custody. Agent Morrison approached us as the tactical team secured the suite. "Mrs. Hartwell? Ms. Santos? Are you both injured?" "We're fine," I managed, though my legs felt like water. "Ms. Santos," Agent Morrison continued, turning to Sloane, "the intelligence package you provided was extraordinary. We've been trying to build a case against this organization for 3 years. Your evidence gave us everything we needed." Sloane nodded, but her attention was focused on me. "Mrs. Hartwell, we should get you checked by a paramedic." "I'm fine," I said, then caught myself. "Sloane, it's Colleen. Please." A small smile touched her lips. "Colleen." The next few hours passed in a blur of interviews, statements, and medical examinations. Federal agents wanted to know everything about Vincent's approach to me, about the contract terms, about any other business dealings that might be connected to his operation. Sloane and I were kept in separate rooms for most of it, but I found myself constantly looking toward the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. When we were finally released, the sun was setting over the city. We stood outside the federal building, both of us exhausted, but somehow lighter than we'd been in years. "So," I said, unsure how to begin, "what happens now?" Sloane adjusted the strap of her bag, looking suddenly uncertain. I suppose I should find somewhere else to live. This changes things between you and my mother. Between all of us. Does it have to? She looked at me in surprise. Sloan, I said carefully, for 15 years, I had Robert's daughter living in my house, and I never knew it. I never saw it. I treated you like you were invisible and you saved my life anyway. You don't owe me anything, she said quietly. I owe you everything. The words came out stronger than I'd intended. You could have let Vincent destroy me. You could have let me sign that contract and disappear. Instead, you risked your own life to protect someone who'd never shown you any kindness. Your family, she said simply. That's what family does. Is it? Because I'm not sure I know what family means anymore. I took a deep breath. Would you help me learn? The hope that flickered in her eyes reminded me so much of Robert that my chest tightened. I'd like that, she said softly. Good. Because I have a proposition for you. She raised an eyebrow, and I could see Robert in that gesture too. Hartwell Industries needs someone with your skills. Someone who understands cybersecurity, who can trace financial irregularities, who can protect us from people like Vincent. I paused. I'm offering you a job, a real job, with a real salary and real responsibilities. Colleen, you don't have to— I'm not offering this out of guilt, I interrupted. I'm offering it because you're brilliant. Because you saved not just my life, but my company. Because you're Robert's daughter, and he would be proud of what you've accomplished. Tears gathered in her eyes. You really mean that? I mean all of it. I reached into my purse and pulled out something I'd been carrying for 8 years. Robert's wedding ring, which I'd never been able to bear wearing but couldn't bring myself to put away. He should have known about you. He would have loved you. I held out the ring. This belongs to his daughter now. Sloane's hands shook as she took it, closing her fingers around the simple gold band. I used to dream about him knowing who I was, about him being proud of me. He would have been. He is. We stood there in the fading light, two women who'd found each other in the aftermath of violence and deception, the family we'd never known we were. There's one more thing, I said. I want to change my will. Sloane looked startled. Colleen, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Robert's daughter should inherit Robert's company. All of it, when the time comes. I don't want your money, she said firmly. It's not my money. It's our family's legacy. And you're the only family I have left. A year later, I stood in the conference room where Vincent had first presented his poisonous offer. The space had been completely redecorated. Gone were the heavy drapes and dark wood that had made it feel like a tomb. Now it was filled with light, modern furniture, and photographs that told the story of Hartwell Industries' resurrection. Sloane sat at the head of the table, leading a presentation to our newest clients. As Chief Technology Officer, she'd implemented security protocols that made us the most trusted logistics company on the West Coast. Her cybersecurity expertise had not only protected us from future threats, but had attracted new business from companies that valued digital safety above all else. She wore Robert's ring on a chain around her neck, and sometimes I caught her touching it when she was thinking through a particularly complex problem. The gesture reminded me so much of her father that it still took my breath away. The quarterly reports show a 37% increase in revenue, she was saying, her voice confident and clear. Client retention is at 94%, and we have a waiting list of new companies wanting to partner with us. After the meeting, we walked to Robert's office, now hers, together. The space bore little resemblance to how he'd left it, but the spirit was the same. Integrity, innovation, family. I have something for you, Sloane said, pulling out a wrapped package. Inside was a framed photograph I'd never seen before. Robert and a young woman who could only be Maria, both of them laughing at something off camera. Maria looked radiant, happy in a way I'd never seen during her years working for us. She kept this hidden for 29 years, Sloane said softly. But before she died last month, she wanted you to have it. She wanted you to know that she never meant to deceive you. She loved him, and she wanted me to know him, even if it was from a distance. I traced Robert's face in the photograph, seeing joy there that I'd forgotten existed. She gave you the greatest gift she could, I said. She let you grow up knowing what kind of man your father was. And you gave me the chance to honor his memory, Sloane replied, by saving the company he built, by building something better. We stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The same view Robert had loved, now shared by his daughter and his widow. Do you think he would approve? I asked, of how we've changed things. Sloane smiled, that familiar smile that was pure Robert. I think he'd be proud that his family finally found each other. His family. The words filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt since the day Robert died. I'd spent 8 years thinking I was alone, that I'd lost everything when I lost him, but I'd been wrong. His greatest gift hadn't been the company he'd built or the legacy he'd left behind. It had been the daughter he'd never known he had, the young woman who'd grown up loving him from afar and who'd saved us both when it mattered most. Vincent was serving 3 consecutive life sentences in federal prison. His money laundering network had been dismantled, and the stolen pension funds had been returned to their rightful owners. Justice had been served, but more importantly, a family had been restored. As Sloane and I locked up the office and walked to the parking garage together, I realized that some stories don't end with revenge or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes they end with something much more powerful, the quiet recognition that love and loyalty can exist in the most unexpected places, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal themselves. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that moment comes just in time to save your life. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.